Culture wars, the war against the Western culture in this country. You know, the big symbols of our Anglo-Celtic culture keep falling. I'm not Anglo, I'm not Celtic, but I respect our culture. They keep falling. Captain Cook, he was just a racist. The Lord's Prayer in Parliament, get rid of it. And then there's a push now by the ABC and Channel 10 to even get rid of European place names, replace them with Aboriginal ones. Next, well, perhaps our most popular poem, The Man from Snowy River, Banjo Paterson. So famous, this poem, that it inspired a film starring Tom Burlinson as the man on that famous ride. Well, big mistake. Sydney Morning Herald today says a new book shows that the man from Snowy River was actually Aboriginal. Now, sadly, I doubt that this great poem is taught much now. But older Australians would know about that man who turns up with his mounted pony to go help chase down a valuable horse that's got away and is running with the Brumbies. You're too young, this guy's told. Your horse is too small. You can't join us. And then Clancy of the Overflow speaks up for him, says, let him ride. He hails from Snowy River, up by Kosciuszko's side, where the hills are twice as steep and twice as rough, where a horse's hooves strike firelight from the flintstones every stride. The man that holds his own is good enough. And of course, The Man from Snowy River rides like lightning. Great poem. Now, this man has long been said to be the Irish-born Jack Riley, whose grave at Corryong boasts of that claim. But the author of this new book, Anthony Sharwood, says that's all wrong. The poem has two lines, he says. And down by Kosciuszko, where the pine-clad ridges raise their torn and rugged battlements on high. Well, he says, the only place where these pine-clad ridges are, well, that's a place where the only good riders are Aboriginal. So there. Of course, that's not quite how local historians remember it at all.
Early 1890, Walter Mitchell took Banjo up to visit Jack at Tom Grogan. They stayed with Jack, and then Jack took them, he guided them up Kosciuszko to the South Ram's Head, through the Cascade country, the Pilot, back to Grogan. And Banjo Paterson penned the poem shortly after that. To me, there's no doubt that that encounter was his inspiration for writing his magnificent poem, The Man from Snowy River.
But what would she know, and do facts count anymore anyway? Joining me is Rowan Dean, editor of The Spectator Australia and debonair host of Outsiders on Sky News on Sundays at 9 a.m. Rowan Dean, what is happening here?
Well, Andrew, it's fascinating because Banjo Paterson himself said that The Man from Snowy River had several individuals who inspired the character and so on with the story, although Jack Riley does appear to be the leading contender. But I'm setting up a new department at the University of Sydney, which I'm going to call past comorbidities. And this is the study where you are morbidly fascinated with overturning historical truths and coming up with new ones. So in fact, forget Banjo Paterson. It wasn't Banjo Paterson at all. It was Didgeridoo Paterson who wrote that poem. And he wrote it about his mates down there, and it was an Indigenous bunch of stockmen. And we could go on. In fact, another thing that I've recently uncovered, Andrew, which you will appreciate as a Dutch person or a man of Dutch heritage, Dirk Hartog, forget Dirk Hartog, he was not Dutch. He was an Indigenous Australian. And that plate, that pewter plate, was in fact just from the cutlery, from the dishwasher down the road in the local Indigenous village, where they just happened to, they found a plate, and there were some knives and forks as well, if you actually go into it. So, but on a serious note, Andrew, I'm actually fascinated by this, and I think the Sydney Morning Herald might have actually bitten off more than they can chew, because let's just delve into this. If we're talking about the 1890s, the height of the colonial period, remember, colonialism stands for everything that is bad, and if you were to listen to today's woke generation, the colonialists were, of course, treating Indigenous Australians as slaves. They had them, they did not recognise them, they had nothing to do with them, and yet here we have this new claim that, in fact, here's an Indigenous guy, he's got his own horses, he's a rider, he's a stockman, he's obviously making good money, he's working in a town, an Indigenous area where there are lots of Aboriginal stockmen. They're all doing well. They're all thriving. They get involved. One of them gets involved in helping round up the cult from Old Regret. And at no point does any one of these racist, evil colonialists say, hang on, why have we got the Indigenous bloke coming along on the ride? No, they perfectly accept him. He's part of the gang. Of course he's going to ride with them. They don't even notice the colour of his skin. So let's go down this path. Let's applaud the Sydney Morning Herald for recognising that back in the colonial era, there was no racism. It didn't exist. And thank you, Mr. Sydney Morning Herald, for proving it to us.
Brilliant. Rowan, I think that's probably your most brilliant contribution yet. I love it. I now insist that this man from Snowy River was Aboriginal. I insist on it. I think there's a lot in this theory. I'm going to read this book. Absolutely. I wish I could remember the title of it so I could recommend it to my friends.